Good Friday afternoon to everyone. This is end of the week treat I called. I am Valarie Worthy. I'm so excited to begin my weekend with sharing rich, wonderful, relatable, reliable information to you all so that you can share it to your community. We are also celebrating 25 years of 50 Hoops. Woohoo! The wonderful work that they have been doing across the United States, changing lives, saving people, raising awareness. And we want to continue to do the good work that has begun. But before we get started, I would like for our chaplain, Dr. Lester Singleton, to provide the invocation, and then we'll move on with this wonderful program. So, Dr. Singleton, could you begin our invocation?
Yes, thank you, Valarie. Once again, Lord, we just want to thank you for this awesome privilege to once again be in your presence. And we invoke your presence in our seminar today. Not only that, Lord, we will ask your blessing upon every participant and their family. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. That's the best way to start off any program, because the things that you will see today are things that are faith-based in the community, things that are relatable to our community, and things that we believe that will help raise awareness about clinical trials. So I am going to share my screen. Let's get started. So as you guys know, clinical trials and trying to recruit minorities and particularly African Americans to clinical trials has been a challenge. So as Robin's working on that, just want to talk to you a little bit about what this is all about and why we felt that we needed guidance, guide rails, 10 commandments, if you will, to help guide us to increase the numbers of minorities in clinical trials. It's been, and as long as I've been involved in cancer awareness, clinical trials has always been a challenge for most of us. But today, I think that we can bring strategies that will make a difference in the lives of not only researchers, principal investigators, clinicians, but most importantly to our community. So what I'd like to do now is to introduce to you, maybe present to others, one of our presenters. The other person is on a plane headed to New York, but she sent her slides and I work very closely with her. So I'll introduce her as well. And then we'll go into talking about the 10 commandments and then the ones that we identify most with in the work that we do in the community. So the first person that I would love for you to know and really get to meet is I call Dr. Tomey. Dr. Tomey and I have worked together at Duke for a few years now, and I've just grown to love her. I love her wisdom, her knowledge, and her tenacity in getting things together and getting us prepared to go out in the community to educate patients. And then also when patients are coming in, make sure that they are aware of the trials that are available at our cancer center. So Dr. Tomey is a cancer epidemiologist with a research focus on the impact of social and biological factors on cancer-related risk, tumor aggressiveness, and survival. Her work has been published in over 130 peer-reviewed publications. She is currently the PI of 2 ongoing studies on cancer disparities, intended to prioritize specific modifiable factors that can be targeted to reduce cancer disparities and improve cancer care. In addition to reducing cancer disparities, she has a wonderful and rich portfolio. Dr. Tomey serves as a vice chair for diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Department of Population Health Sciences. She also serves as the Associate Director of Community Outreach and Engagement at the Duke Cancer Center. Now, the person that's unable to be here is Ricky Fairley. Ricky Fairley is a cancer survivor, and she had stage 3 triple negative breast cancer. Ricky is the co-founder and serves as CEO of Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance.
She got stuck.
The overall goal, you might need to put yourself on mute. Ricky and a co-host, Dr. Mo, every Wednesday hosts the Doctor is In. And this is a weekly live show that brings people together that are cancer survivors and people that support cancer survivors on various topics. She's had as many as 10,000 to view those shows. She also has worked with Morehouse School of Medicine and Susan G. Komen Foundation to raise awareness about breast cancer in the African-American community. Ricky serves on boards of trustees for Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. She's a board member for the Center of Health Care Innovation and ambassador and advisor for the Live Humanly campaign. So again, Ricky was unable to be here, but she sent her slides, and I worked closely with her and her team at Touch Black Breast Cancer Alliance. And so the information that we have today, I cannot tell you how excited I am to share this with you. But before we get started, and just to get things going, I want to share, see if I can share my slides and just put things in perspective here. So if you can just hold on for a second. There we go. Okay, so this is all about recruiting African Americans in clinical trials. So as I was thinking about how could I make this relatable to everyone, because we have a diverse group here, I thought, this is a little known fact. Did you guys know that around 600 BC, it is believed that that was the first clinical trial that happened? Now, it's not a like a medication clinical trial, but it was a clinical trial. And this trial was comparing the effects of a very vegetarian diet to what they call a Babylonian diet, which I think was probably more meat-based, over a 10-day period. So there was two groups of people. One had a vegetarian diet, the others had a very rich diet. And if you want to learn what happened and who had the benefit, you need to go to the Bible, Daniel 1st chapter, read that, and you get more information. But I just thought that that was a really good little known fact about clinical trials. Sometimes we think we're doing the first, but my grandmother used to say, there's nothing new under the sun, and certainly there's nothing new under the sun. Clinical trial accrual, fewer than 1 in 20 adults are in a clinical trial. And I know each one of us know that there are barriers, and depending where you work or what your attitude is, you know a particular barrier that has really either impacted you, a family member, friend, or neighbor. But clinical trial barriers are kind of in certain categories. They could be structural, where, yeah, there's a clinical trial here, but the patient that needs it may be many, many miles away. Or transportation problems, so many problems. Or clinical problems. Well, maybe the patient wants a clinical trial, but it's not available at their local cancer center. And so how do they get closer to a center that can provide the clinical trial? And then we think about the attitudes of our community. They are still afraid. They do not want to be guinea pigs and not want to take the sugar pill. So when you think about all of the variables that go into decision makers of clinical trial, this begs for the community, the cancer center, and the faith community to all come together so that we can solve this problem. What we do know is that studies show that when patients enroll in clinical trials, the treatments, let's say if you think about young children who years ago would have childhood cancers, and years ago, a lot of the children died, but clinical trials were made available. And these parents allowed their children to be on these clinical trials. And so now things that children used to die of, they no longer do. And that is attributed to the numbers of trials and people deciding to get on clinical trials and they are on it at a faster rate, and children are living much, much longer. So this is what I do know. In your lifetime, you will either be officially on a trial or unofficially on a trial. And we can talk about that at the end, but I want you to think about that through this entire thing. Either you're going to officially be on a trial where you sign and say, yes, I agree to be on a trial, or unofficially. But we can talk about that a bit later, something else to ponder. But what can we do? Like, what can we do now? That's the big question. We can take it to the streets. That's what we can do. So how do we do that? How do we take this thing to the streets? Well, some very wise, intelligent people at 50 Hoops thought of creating the 10 commandments for recruiting African Americans into clinical trials. So what I want to do right now is read all 10 of the commandments, and throughout this program, what we want to do and what we'll do, what our speaker will do, we'll match the work that they do in the community with one of the 10 commandments. So you may see on the top of a slide, it may say commandment 1 or commandment 6. And later on at the end of our discussion, if you think like, no, man, that should have been commandment 3 or 4, that would be a healthy discussion. But I do want you to be aware that there are 10 commandments, and I'm going to read them to you right now, and then we'll get into the meat of the matter. So commandment number 1, these are 10 commandments for recruiting minorities, African Americans, into clinical trials. Thou shalt have a dedicated interest in recruiting minorities in every clinical trial. Thou shalt not see minority recruitment as a problem with them, rather a problem to be solved by you and your clinical department. Thou shalt not become complacent with only doctors that produce the greatest number of recruitments. Instead, seek sites with more accessibility to African Americans and Hispanic patients. Commandment 4, thou shalt dedicate oneself to evaluating the community involvement of site investigators to use as a tool to outreach more African Americans and Hispanic patients. Commandment 5, radio advertising is not your God for recruiting African Americans and Hispanics. Thou shalt find ways to make face-to-face contact to educate first in order to recruit African Americans and Hispanics into clinical trials. Commandment number 6, thou shalt build trust among African Americans and Hispanic communities with plan involvement, using people who relate to their culture and who can answer their questions about your clinical trial. Commandment number 7, thou shalt build interest among African Americans and Hispanic communities by finding new ways to inform about disease conditions of clinical trials by using familiar, on-the-ground resources and people who understand the culture. This trust should never be broken in your enthusiasm to recruit patients. Commandment number 8, thou shalt build opt-in and opt-out opportunities specifically targeted to the African American community. Commandment 9, thou shalt build a house of community networks and involvement among minorities that can offer ongoing education and clinical trial opportunities to their constituents that address the disease relevant to diseases that most impact their community. And the last commandment, number 10, thou shalt not give up. I love this one. I'll say this again. Thou shalt not give up, become complacent, or become indifferent if the other 9 commandments do not work immediately or in your very first trial efforts. I kind of feel like Moses, when he threw those commandments down. These are some powerful commandments, but I think that they, again, are guide rails to helping us to enhance diversity participation in clinical trials. So we're going to move forward. You've heard the 10 commandments, and now we're going to take those commandments and align them with the work that we do in our communities. So the commandment number 1 was, thou shalt have a dedicated interest in recruiting minorities into every clinical trial. And I think for me, the operative word was dedicated. You have to be dedicated. You have to be consistent in order to recruit the numbers of minorities that you need to have in a clinical trial. And so I'm gonna turn the mic over, imaginary mic, over to Dr. Tomey. They're doing some wonderful work at Duke in advocacy training in the clinical setting. So Dr. Tomey, can you talk to us about the training, your curriculum, just the thought process behind all of that?
Yeah, happy to. And thanks so much for setting that up. I feel like we all should have a plaque of the 10 commandments and just put it in our office.
Yes.
Have everybody look at it every morning and touch it before they.
Yes, I love that.
Do you want to stop sharing and I can share?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so before I go into what we're doing specifically, I think you gave a great example of just the impact that clinical trials have had. There's another more recent example that maybe folks will be more familiar. We've all heard about immunotherapy, right? That is activating the immune system to fight cancer itself, right? The immune system's job is to constantly be on the lookout to find any cells that looks like it's going crazy and then to just kill it before it develops into something else. Cancer develops when the immune system is not able to catch the cells early before it goes haywire and then the cells divide uncontrollably, right? So in the past 10, 15 years, there've been an explosion in scientific breakthroughs in our understanding of how to help the immune system do a better job at catching those cells early, right? And when the cancer does develop, activating the immune system so that in combination with chemotherapy, with surgery, it's more effective at killing those cancer cells. So there've been, like in the past 20 years, more than 25 new FDA approvals for immunotherapy drugs to target cancer, and they've been having really phenomenal success, helping patients live longer, helping them go into remission. So this is the groundbreaking, state-of-the-art cancer treatment. Well, how does cancer clinical trials play a role? Well, we need to understand how the immune system works, and we need to understand how it works in different types of patients and different populations. If we only study one kind of patient or one kind of population, we have one view of how it might work in that group. But then if we develop drugs based on what we understand in that group, that drug may or may not work in other groups. It may work, but have really bad side effects. We just won't know. And so that makes it less effective overall, right? So why clinical trials? It's because we need to make sure that the drug works and it works for everybody. And we understand what the side effects are so we can communicate with the patients what that risk-benefit analysis is. One example is melanoma. So melanoma is actually not a cancer that develops that's common among African Americans. But when African Americans get melanoma, it's usually diagnosed at advanced stages, right? Because it's usually not detected early. What we know is that the two key clinical trials about immunotherapy in melanoma had less than 1% of African Americans included in those clinical trials, right? So what we've seen in the past 10 years since FDA approval of these immunotherapy drugs is that disparities have now widened. White patients are doing a lot better because there's this new drug that works well for them. Black patients are not doing as well. So we see that gap widen, right? And again, going back, it's because our understanding of the biology of melanoma and immunotherapy and this particular drug did not include enough African Americans for us to understand how it works, for us to optimize the effectiveness of that drug in both populations. So African Americans now are less likely to get immunotherapy. When they get it, it's less likely to be effective. And so we see that white patients are doing a lot better, African American patients not so much, right? That's a problem that we can solve by including more diversity in our clinical trials. That's something that we see at the Cancer Center, at Duke Cancer Center. And, a lot of times when we talk to clinicians and providers, they're like, yeah, we've tried everything. We did this flyer, we sent out the flyer out into the community, and, we want diversity, we want diverse patients, but we just didn't get any. So, and our grant is going to end, so we needed to move on. And so we said, well, did you consider, the language you used in the consent form, right? Did you signal that you're interested in having diverse patients? What were the protocols in your trial, in your clinical trial, that made it easy, that did not create challenges for African Americans to join your study? And then, you kind of start seeing how things start stacking up, and then you're like, well, no wonder you didn't end up with, the diversity that you needed. And then we know that Valarie is a legend. She's awesome and fantastic. There's only one Valarie, and Valarie cannot be on every single study, on every clinical trial, teaching them how to do this. So how can we clone Valarie was the question. How can we have more people who are dedicated, who are passionate, who are champions, who are trained enough on how clinical research works, that they can help and be partners to these clinicians and these clinical research groups to ask the tough questions in the beginning, to tell them, okay, that's not going to work. Have you thought about this? To be that voice of the community, of the African American community that we really want, so that by the time the study actually opens, it's optimized to have the diversity that we need. And then if a patient has a question or has concerns, or there's an interaction that didn't go well, they have somebody that they can talk to, right? So all of those things matter. So that's kind of the long background and rationale for why we started this program. We call it the Patient Advocate Council for Inclusive Research. 100% of the focus is on making sure that our clinical research is diverse and inclusive. And how can we help people, create programs and clinical trials and clinical research that is appealing and of interest to the community that we're interested in? And how can we help that community understand, the value and the importance of clinical trial, and eliminate all those barriers that Valarie mentioned, so that it's easy for both sides to come together, right? So talking with Valarie, we came up with this program, and encouraging every one of us can be a part of a clinical research. There's a study somewhere that we can all qualify for, right? And the reason why we do that is because even if it doesn't benefit us, it benefits science, and it might benefit the next patient down the line. It might benefit our kids, our family, people we don't even know. And this is really, really important, right? So by having patient advocates and having them as part of clinical research team, it increases the diversity in the trials. And that means, again, it's improved treatment efficacy, the treatment works better, it's more effective. And then the findings we get, the information we get from that trial can be generalizable to the whole community, not just a subset of the people that happen to be in that trial, right? We know that this drug works because we tested it, and we tested it on different types of patients. And so we're confident in that result. That also helps improve outcomes, right? Because it makes sure the drugs works really well, it minimizes adverse side effects. And so our advocates can really help us think about how we're designing the study in the first place, remove all extraneous unnecessary exclusion criteria that doesn't really make any sense, but serves to discourage people from attending. And then it demystifies the whole process. Like clinical trial sometimes sounds like a very dangerous thing. Like, I don't want to be a trial. I don't want to be a guinea pig. They're just going to poke me and nothing is going to happen. But for people that have been through it, they can say, well, actually, here's what it was like for me. And, you know, it ended up being okay, right? And they can also help bridge that gap between scientists and community members. Because a lot of times, us scientists, we don't know how to speak in plain language. Where spent 10 years in school and we forgot how to speak English. And so the advocates can really help us with our language and making sure that, you know, patients' perspective from different backgrounds inform all aspects of the research. And within the team, they can really help design, you know, what that patient-centered communication is, what is the recruitment plan that can reach African Americans. Like, don't just blast something on the radio, right? Do you need to go to a church? Do you need to go to a community organization? How do you reach that community member that you need? How do you retain people in your study so that they enroll, but then they don't drop off because the requirements are too difficult, right? And so for here, again, we focus on diverse population groups that are underrepresented in clinical research. So that includes African Americans, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian. It also includes adolescents and young adults. That group also tends to be underrepresented, but they also get cancer. And clinical trial, as Valarie said, has been transformative in improving outcomes. We need to encourage more participation. And then older adults, a lot of times we think, oh, they're 80 years old, so maybe, but 80-year-olds also get cancer, and there are ways and there are trials that can help them. We need to understand how those work. So the advocates have to be from an underrepresented group. They have to be a cancer survivor that has been through their treatment journey and are now in a place physically and mentally that they are able to serve as an advocate. Or they can have a unique cancer perspective. So if they're a caregiver or part of a high-risk group, so they have a mutation that places them at high risk, they could also be eligible. And so the first thing, we want to make sure that they are empowered, right, to be able to have these conversations. And that means understanding enough about clinical research and how it works and all the components and requirements and considerations so that they can have those conversations. So we're actually partnering with the University of Florida, developed a really nice citizen science curriculum. And it has video modules, it has written sections that walks people through each of the different sections and it's really excellent training. So we're leveraging all the work that they've done. And then we'll go into detail of like breast cancer, prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, what is unique about each of those cancers, just so they have a little bit more understanding. And then thanks to Valarie, we'll have a very specific module on how do you advocate, right? How do you become a patient advocate? How do you connect with other organizations? How do you advocate on behalf of patients? So that's the training. And our advocates are currently going through this process, and we have monthly debriefs where we discuss what they're learning, try to address any questions. The time commitments, we are hoping will be around 4 hours a month, no more than 4 hours a month. This will be for reviewing proposals, attending meetings, dissemination, and all of those things. And it's really important to us that we provide financial compensation for their time. This is not just a volunteer thing. It's a labor of love. We know it's time intensive, and it's important that we compensate. So here are our current 4 advocates that are going through the training right now. As you can see, we have African Americans, male, female. We have an American Indian ovarian cancer survivor here. And really, really strong group. And just hearing their stories and their treatment journey is so inspiring. And we can already see how they will have an impact in helping those other research teams be better at recruiting more diverse participants into their trial. Then Dr. Dan George is the oncologist who's partnering with us on this and helping us think through kind of the clinical trainings that will be helpful for the participants to have, and of course, Valarie as well. So we're still in the middle of training. We hope to connect the advocates to research teams and then have them, do their good work and then see what happens from there. So I'll stop there and then probably take questions later.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tone. This is I just love it. I love it because everyone has an opportunity to get involved, from, the oncologists to the researchers, and then getting our oncologists. So later plans to get our oncologists even to handpick some of their patients that have successfully gone through a clinical trial. I think is as important as well. But this is a great way for patients that maybe even be considering going through a clinical trial. And then if they see someone that has successfully gone through a clinical trial, and we can kind of do a peer-to-peer thing where they have these conversations with these patients, I think that would go a long way toward patients feeling more comfortable. African Americans are people of witness. So when they witness someone that has gone through a clinical trial, that is so helpful. I just want to say, Dr. Tomey, thank you so much for your dedication for doing this. There is no other cancer center that I know that's doing this. And I think this is something that you can share across the United States, actually across the planet. And it's going to improve relationships and the numbers of people that are enrolling clinical trials. I'm just honored to work with your team. So thank you so much for this. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again and want to show you all this before we move on to our next one. Yeah. Just wanted to share this story with you because I think in listening to this story, it'll just kind of highlight the importance of what we're doing and why we do it. Can you hear it?
Monday morning comes on July 26, 2021. I'm actually working in the ER at this point, and I get an alert on my phone. It said that results were ready. I found out that I had triple negative breast cancer at the age of 36 through a text message on my phone while I was working in the ER with no family history. Sorry, guys. I just couldn't believe it. This summer of 2021, I felt a lump in my left breast just doing a monthly self-exam. I'm a healthcare provider myself, so I really didn't think much of it at that time because I had recently stopped breastfeeding about 5 to 6 months prior to that. Towards the end part of my neoadjuvant chemotherapy, I had learned about a life-saving immunotherapy they had. And when I learned that I did not receive this immunotherapy, I asked my doctor about it. He turns his screen towards me and said, well, it wasn't on my list, so that's why you didn't receive it. And so at that point, I fired him. I got another oncologist. When I reached my new oncologist, during the second appointment with her, we found a clinical trial. She had me in the clinical trial within 1 week. When I received the congratulatory news that I was able to enroll in the clinical trials, I was just like, oh my God. I felt as though, okay, this is probably one of the best things that I can do for my children. It kind of made me feel like I'm setting up their medical trust fund so that they're sampling me, my body, they're studying my body so that my children potentially won't have to battle this same disease. Clinical trials study investigational drugs that may be more helpful, not just for me, but for everyone who has this disease, for everyone who looks like me who has this disease, for my daughters who may develop, who will develop breast in a few years. I don't want them to have this disease. So I feel as though being in the clinical trial is a win-win situation. The studies show that the main reason why Black women don't participate in clinical trials is because point blank, we're not asked, we're not considered, we're not offered. And so we need to be proactive as Black women to ask for clinical trials from the first step. And one thing that I want other women and people of color to know is that I know that we have a strong history of medical mistrust, but we have paved the way, and it is not like that anymore. You're not just a test subject, that you're actually a human body being studied in a clinical trial. it can help also break down those healthcare disparities that we have so that we can get to the end and fight cancer to end it all forever.
I thought that was powerful, and I think it also underscores what Dr. Tomei was talking about with the immunotherapy, not having enough African Americans in clinical trials. I spoke with Latoya a couple of weeks ago, and she continues to do well. But her story is strong, it's powerful, and it is relatable. And if you think about the 10 Commandments, is probably a couple of them, Pat, that I believe that she checked off just by sharing that. One thing she said that really stood out to me, we talk about trust funds in terms of finances, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone say medical trust fund, and that really tugged at my heartstrings. So Latoya is really good at clarifying things for patients and sharing her information, not only in her clinical setting, but out in the community as well. I love that video, and I plan to show it wherever I can show it. But that is another way, again, that we can align with the 10 Commandments and then raise awareness about clinical trials. I got just a few more slides that I'd like to share with you because I'm looking at the time now. Excellent. So we're talking about taking it to the streets. And what does that mean? That means sharing our story. It means being intent about engaging communities, even communities that maybe we don't live in those communities, but being intent about going in those communities and talking to people about clinical trials. And especially, I think if we are cancer survivors, the onus is on us for us to share our stories and not be embarrassed because we're cancer survivors. We have to share our stories. Ricky Farley, which I said earlier, she is the co-founder for Touch. And she and her team has been doing a lot of good work in the community. And one of the things that her team has done is to put a real life face on clinical trials, but also look at other opportunities where we could kind of normalize what clinical trials look like. In addition to that, because I'm here in the Durham area and I have a pastor that's really been open and honest about allowing me to share health information, he's also allowed me to talk a lot about clinical trials. So this commandment, thou shalt build trust among African Americans and Hispanic communities with planned involvement using people who can relate to their culture and who can answer their questions about clinical trials. So what we did a few years back, we actually went into the community and we had town hall meetings. And the things that we saw the things you see in red are the things that we really focused on. Providing community education about researching clinical trials. We also collaborated with a lot of community-based organizations to build programs and to share resources. And one of the biggies, as I said earlier, was getting support for pastors and spiritual leaders in diverse communities. As you all know, when someone's diagnosed with a cancer, probably the first, if not the second person that they go to is their pastor. But pastors are not equipped to give information, to their members. And it could be something as simple as when you see your doctor, he will talk about a lot of choices that you have to make. Please do not close your ears to a possibility of enrolling in a clinical trial. Just that endorsement from a pastor, goes a long way toward a patient that otherwise would not even consider a clinical trial, to them at least having a conversation about a clinical trial. Number 7 commandment, thou shalt build interest among African Americans and Hispanic communities by finding new ways to inform about disease conditions of clinical trials by using familiar, on-the-ground resources and people who understand the culture. This trust should never be broken in your enthusiasm to recruit patients. So what we did at my church was we brought people in. We had conferences. 50 Hoops came in and did a clinical trial on a Friday night, and we had a packed audience. We had over 100 people. We've given seminars. We've been involved in walks. We've done studies, and we've also had oncologists to come in and talk about financial toxicity. This was all done in a familiar place where people felt safe. Again, we had the clinical trial awareness, and in your upper right-hand corner, these are area oncologists from Wake Forest, Duke, and UNC, who didn't think it robbery to come on a Friday night and to talk about clinical trials. We had a wonderful dinner, we had giveaways, and again, people really, really enjoyed it. But this is a way of getting your community involved in a space that they feel comfortable. Now, something that's unique is, how do we get young women involved in knowing about their bodies and subsequently opening their minds and their hearts to potential clinical trials? Well, one way of doing it is to try to target those that are under 35. And so at Touch, Black Breast Cancer Alliance, this is one of the initiatives that they are doing. And this is like a 1-minute video.
Girl, for the love of my girl.
Black women under 35 get breast cancer at 2 times the rate of white women
and die at 3 times the rate.
It's up to us to take care of our girls.
The only solution is conversation.
I choose Black Breast Health because protecting my girls means protecting all Black girls.
I unlock my her story by talking with my family about our shared health history to know my personal risk.
I get to know my girls as an act of self-care. Are you ready to get in touch with your girls? Visit
loveofmygirls.org to get in touch with your girls.
So again, this is another way that we can engage the community there. And I think you remember when LaToya talked about, she talked a lot about her children, and they will be getting older soon, and what type of investment she needs to do to get them engaged and get them aware. We got to start when people are young. We have to start before a person has a cancer to begin raising awareness about clinical trials. It is very difficult when you are diagnosed with a cancer for someone to say to you, you want to roll in clinical trial. You're afraid, you want to live. And so if you're thinking that this trial is you're taking a sugar pill or you're a guinea pig, of course, you're going to say, no, I do not want to be a part of it. But if this has been a part of your experience, a part of your education, then you are more than likely to be more open to at least having a conversation with your doctor, again, about the clinical trial. I have a couple of more slides, and then I just want to open it up for conversation. Again, these are, like, I think, not difficult ways that we can begin a conversation, but they're easy, and they're things that each one of us can do. I don't think it requires a medical degree for us to begin having these kind of conversations. So take notes, any of these things that you want to use, borrow my slides, it doesn't matter. I just know that we need to get this information out to our community, because our cancer rates, they're not good, and we need to do something about it. So just a few more slides, and then I just want to open it up to questions. I had a ton of slides here because there's so much good information that's out there. So again, Touch does a lot of things with the When We Trial movement. They're out across the nation talking about clinical trials, talking with ladies on any platforms, from skating rinks to hair shows, you name it, where people play, slay, lay, wherever. That is their goal, and their motto is to get people engaged in any way that they can. And I wanted to show you some slides of some other things that they're doing, but I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm going to stop. I want to open it up to questions. The other thing that I wanted to share with you guys as I close my slides down. Last week, I was at a health fair, and it was, I guess, 200 to 300 people there. And I had a table, and my table was totally focused on clinical trials. I had like a spin the wheel counter machine, and I had different giveaways. But I also had a photo album. So if you could imagine an 8x10 photo album, and I took the small little wrappers from the Tylenol, Advil, Excedrin, and I put them all in this little frame. And so when people came to my table, they would ask me, what is this? What is this all about? And I said, did you know that all of the over-counter medicines that you take, someone was on a clinical trial? And they were like, really? I said, yes. And did you know that the average person on a clinical trial, over-the-counter clinical trial, is a 50-year-old white man? So the medications, over-the-counter medications, the Advil, Tylenol, Excedrin, that we take is based on his height and his weight. So when it says take 2 tablets every 4 to 6 hours, maybe due to my height, my weight, maybe I only need to take 1 every 6 hours instead of 2 every 4 hours. But because there are not enough African Americans that are in this clinical trial, we don't know. And so those ladies were just so taken aback just by that simple fact. And I said, if we're going to talk about health equity, I think it has to begin at home. And just before I got on this Zoom call, one of the ladies that was at my table, she called me and she said, I have really been thinking about your presentation. I had no idea that were not represented in clinical trials. And so I don't know if you guys remember at the beginning of my presentation, I said that either you would officially or unofficially be on a clinical trial. And this is what I was alluding to. When you're officially on a clinical trial, you know, you go through all the examinations, you sign the informed consent, you are watched very closely. Any side effects, adverse reactions are recorded. You get top-notch care. Now, when the medication is approved and FDA says, this is safe to give, and we take our medication and we have these side effects, there's nobody to record them. So if I am having a side effect from a medicine that's been approved 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 years ago, where would that information go? It goes nowhere. So if I am not sharing that information with my community, then no one would know that, oh gosh, this is blood pressure medicine that people take and they have a cough. Or there's a blood pressure medication that people take and they're having anaphylactic reactions. And there is medication that's going on. But because we did not have enough African Americans in clinical trials, then we don't know. And so that's why it is so important for us to get out into our communities and have these conversations. What you have witnessed today is looking at our cancer center, represented by Dr. Tomey, who has advocates, people that have gone successfully through a clinical trial that are now willing to be trained to sit at a table with a researcher and offer advice. They are also willing to go back out into the community to share their information. And if there is someone that is interested in a clinical trial, they've also offered their services. These people did not take their diagnosis as a curse, but really as a blessing. You've also seen how the faith-based community opened their doors to researchers and other healthcare providers so that their platforms could be used as means for educating people about clinical trials in a safe place. Who goes to church on a Friday night to listen to someone talk about clinical trials? Well, surprise, surprise, people did it and it was successful. And then lastly, you saw a young lady who was diagnosed with triple negative disease, and another older lady that was diagnosed with triple negative disease that came together and said, we got to do something about this. We got to put a different face on what clinical trials looks like to our community. So they have worked in concert to not only look at people that are their age, but even younger people to catch them at the beginning before they're even diagnosed. And then they go out into the hedges, highways, and byways and talk to people about clinical trials. And so the work that we are doing is aligning with 50 Hoops and the commandments. One of the scriptures, Pat, in the Bible says, we perish for the lack of knowledge. We can no longer say that now. We have the knowledge. We've seen there are 3 options wherever you are. If you're a clinician, if you're in the community, if you're associated with a faith-based community, everybody has this opportunity to be a part of, I think, this whole educational opportunity. So we say, take it out to the streets, make sure you do face-to-face contact, and get on the soul train, which I absolutely love. For y'all that are young, y'all won't appreciate it. But for those of us that used to watch Don Cornelius and the Soul Train, we felt like we were a part of a group of people that were on the move, if you can remember Soul Train. And so that's what I'm saying.
Hi, Val. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. In terms of on the move, we wanted everyone
Yes.
to participate in the polls. So I'm going to
Okay.
launch one now, and there'll be 2
Okay.
more to come. So you can keep going, but these polls are going to start launching. We like
Okay.
it to take
Yeah,
a couple
make
of
sure
seconds. About
thank you,
60.
Robin, because I'd almost forgotten that.
No problem. Keep going. And people can fill it out, but you keep going. But
Okay, yeah.
they're
So I just
participating
make
now.
sure you
Everyone has a chance to participate in this
okay.
poll. So hopefully you can see the first one and participate.
Does everybody see that? All right, cool. So we're just encouraging you just to do the small things, because everything makes a big, big difference. And I think not one of us would say that we wouldn't come alongside you if you're at a cancer center, a church, or whatever. All of the things that we do are modifiable, and we're more than happy to come alongside you and help you in any way that we possibly can.
Val, this is phenomenal. While the polls are running, we're going to pull some names for some gifts and prizes before we close out with the pastor. And I think Ed has already selected some guests. So we have to remember, all the legends will get their anniversary t-shirts, and we'll be giving out the anniversary t-shirts in July. The 3-day celebration for the 50 Hoops 25th anniversary is July the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. So sometime next week or so, you guys will be getting that.
We have 5 gifts to give away. Be
Woohoo.
sure and send me your email address, your mailing address, and your t-shirt size. Send that to PSOC, PEASOC @yahoo.com. PSOC@yahoo.com. The first gift winner is a $50 gift card, and the winner is Betty Stewart. Betty Stewart, $50 gift card winner.
Is
The
she here?
second winner is,
Is she here?
yes,
Okay.
an
Okay.
edibles gift package.
Whoa.
That winner is
Dessert.
Andrea Murray. Andrea Murray, edible gift card winner. The third winner is a t-shirt. Brian Gonzalez. I need your t-shirt sizes and your mailing address. The next t-shirt winner is Carolyn Pinckney. Carolyn Pinckney. I need your t-shirt sizes and your addresses. The last winner is Gloria Goodwin. Gloria Goodwin. Don't forget to send me everything to my email address, name, address, t-shirt size, etc. Thanks so much.
We're
Val?
still on the first poll because you all are working diligently through it. So I know it's a lot of questions, but
No,
Oh,
the
that's
next one will
okay.
be a little shorter. So we just want to make sure that you have a chance to give an evaluation of the presentation that's coming up. So I definitely want you all to stay vigilant and participate in this evaluation poll.
Can
So
we do
if you
some
wanna put-
Q&A?
Yeah. Your email address, I'll put it in the chat, chat. You said PESOC?
PEASOC @yahoo.com.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for filling out the first poll. We got about 57%. All right, just a little bit more, and then we're going to the second poll.
And we can continue with questions, Val, if you want.
Well, someone put in the chat that they love the presentation and would like to receive the slides, so I could send them to you.
Send them to us and
Okay.
we'll post them, and as well as Dr. Tomi's slides as well.
Okay.
We'll post them. Mhm.
Wonderful.
Were there any questions for Dr. Tomi?
Oh, yeah,
Well-
someone asking about what do you say after you pray, and training the community navigator. So what do you say after you pray piece is a program that we go out and talk to pastors about after you pray for that member, what do you say and what do you do? And so that program helps arm the pastors with a name of a navigator at the local cancer center, but also arming that pastor with information, just a little bit of information that he would need to be able to answer just a basic cancer question. And then the community navigator program is that there's a pharmaceutical company that is interested in piloting having a community oncology navigator to help patients after 5. So from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, most patients have access to their health team. But how many of you all know that the questions and the pain and everything else begins after 5 o'clock and at night, where you feel like you can't get anybody? And so this program, Community Oncology Navigation, is designed again to help that patient that's on that clinical trial. They're out in the community, they're unsure, they're frightened, they don't know about resources, but they can pick up that phone Monday through Friday, 7 days a week, and there will be someone there to answer their call and help walk with them. And again, the goal is to retain people that are on clinical trials, because that's when people get very nervous. But if you have someone to talk to, I think that helps the process. So those were the 2 questions that I saw, Ed and Pat, that were here.
Val, those are wonderful. And if they want to have a little more information on what do you say after you pray, which would be based focused on the faith-based health ministries, And the second one with how do you train your community's community navigator?
Mhm.
Who would they call? How would they reach you or Dr. Tommy or Ricky? You have some information?
I can I can give you all the information. You can put it on your website. Would that work for you?
Yeah,
Valerie,
put
we
it in
can
the
add the
chat for now.
contacts,
What'd you
Put it
say?
in the
Put in chat? Okay.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
and we can add it to the slides that we'll share as well.
Oh, yeah,
And the
that's
slides,
right.
yeah, we'll get the
Okay.
slides, right.
Excellent. That's a great idea.
We're at 50% of this question, the second poll. So we'll just give you another 50 seconds.
You're getting your questions in. We're going to answer these questions for you. Valarie, you have done an absolutely phenomenal job. This has been you, Dr. Tommy, even Richard, even Ricky secondhand has done a wonderful job. You showed her slides and they were all just riveting. Thank you so much. And thank all of you who are participating. This is a great crowd here tonight on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Somebody, who is that? Somebody got dessert tonight. Yeah, you got
And the
dessert
last
with your
poll is
dinner.
coming up so everybody can participate in this call to action. So I'm just ending this poll now. If everybody's
Yeah,
ready, it's
take
going
your
to
time
end.
and fill that out. That helps us continue this with the
Okay.
legends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's go to the last one. So it's a call to action. I'm launching that now. It's a very short one.
Awesome.
So thank you all for participating in just one more round of participation.
No problem. And while you're doing the polls, anybody had anything for Dr. Tommy? She was outstanding. And
Yes.
what she is doing with her patient advocacy is just unbelievable. And I think
Yes.
any of us can take a teeny bit of this into our communities. And I know there are other communities that are doing some outstanding things, but putting them all together, that is nothing but power.
Yeah, yeah.
Power.
Thank you so much. And, again, it's a team effort. We appreciate the work partnership with Valarie, and Yadu here is the program manager. So she keeps track of all the details for us. And, we're happy to collaborate and partner with any organization, institution,
Yes.
talk more about how we can work together to achieve this goal. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah.
We're happy to chat more.
And I tell you, Dr. Tommy, I've been connected with Ed and Pat for some years, and it's like a family. It's, I can call and ask, well, do you know of someone in Kalamazoo? And they know people. And so I feel like when they're connected to people, I'm connected to people, and then they'll call and ask me about somebody in North Carolina. So when you're connected to them, it's a strong connection, and it's authentic, it's real, it's all of the above. And just being connected, I know that this is a gift from God.
Oh, we're connected now. So
Yes, you are connected. That's right.
And by the way, it isn't Ed and Pat, it's the 50 Who's Legend, because we've gotten more stuff done from coast to coast because of Doris, because of Sheila, because of Valarie, because of Robin, because of all of the legends, because Ed and I could not do this by ourselves. No way, we could never do this alone. Thank you so much, Valarie. We're just about ready to bring it to a close with the pastor. And let us know, Robin, when you're ready. You sure nobody has any more questions? Everybody's got this down pretty good. There's a lot of information there. We're so glad to see everybody.
Yeah, just maybe a couple more seconds. I think some people are still working through it.
That's okay. This helps us get our funding so we can keep going.
Yes. Yeah.
It's good to see all of you. Dr. Morgan, it's so good to see you, not see you, but it's good. Beverly, Kelly, Fayville, Nubia, all of you guys, Kirsten, we've seen all of you guys before. We're so glad that you came in and joined us today. We really are.
Okay, we're going to close it out in about 25 more seconds.
Okay.
And I even see some of my church members, I see their names. And so I appreciate their support.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Got a new coworker that just started this week and she's on. And Melody, I appreciate you, girl. I mean, just the support that just means the world to me. That on a Friday that you didn't think
That's
it wrong.
right. To have those numbers on the Friday is good. It was a wonderful program. All of you did a wonderful job.
Okay, we're going to end that so you can see the results of the action. Many of you want call to action.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Love
Okay,
it.
those will be reported in our annual report. We'll get these out here so you can take a look and see what these are doing. Very good. And thank Dr. Robin Kelly. She is on our board, Dr. Lester Singleton, but Robin is on our board, and Dr. Singleton, Dr. Kelly, the soon-to-be Dr. Upshaw, Sheila and Lee Patterson, Doris, everybody that's on here. Thank all of our legends. We really, really appreciate and love you all. If I missed anybody, it's only because I don't see you in the little square, but I'll know you were here.
Thank you again for your participation in the polls, and that's it for me.
Okay, Pastor, can you take us out?
Yes, ma'am. All right, let's go. Lord, once again, Lord, awesome information that we have received this evening. And Lord Jesus, I pray that you would touch every participant heart, that we would go out and share the day with others for their physical and spiritual health. And now that as we dismiss from this seminar, Lord, under no circumstances do we dismiss from your holy presence. Continue to lead us and guide us, Lord, as we dismiss from this place. And we say thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Thank you,
God bless
guys.
all of you.
See you next time.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.